Mo, who's been in touch and says neither the Tory nor Labour governments have lost control of immigration. The massive rise in numbers has been deliberate since Blair. The king knows why. Sandra says, I'm truly terrified. What if we are letting in the enemy? Will we be invaded from within? There are military-aged, healthy, strong-looking men coming in. Can Starmer assure me I am safe, that my family are safe? Christina says, hi Peter, it's all for votes to relax illegal immigration. Does he not realise they will vote for the independents that hold their beliefs? Labour are betraying the British people, says Christina. And Lorraine says, fact, Starmer lies like a cheap rug. He is a liar. He has lied continuously and repeatedly, and nothing that comes out of his mouth can be trusted or believed. An incompetent human rights lawyer who cares not a jot about the human rights for those he dislikes, the farmers, the elderly, the middle classes, the waspy women, the employers, the council taxpayers, and the far right. Do as I say, not as I do. We are in serious trouble. Surely he was elected on falsehoods and therefore must be held accountable, says Lorraine. I just get the sense she doesn't really like Keir Starmer.
I don't think she's a Labour voter.
No.
I'll put it down as undecided if I was canvassing.
That's my favourite now, two-tier cheap rug Keir. That's fantastic.
Two-tier cheap rug Keir. We are at the debate desk now with Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, who is a Conservative councillor and political commentator, and Matthew Laza, former Labour advisor. Matthew, Labour under a lot of pressure. We're asking the question today, why is Labour not making our borders safe? The Prime Minister easing rules for illegal migrants. What do you make of this?
So I think Labour is taking action to make our borders safe, but I think that there are two issues this morning you've been examining. There's the issue about about the tests on whether people are actually genuinely under 18, and then there's the issue about what you do with people when they arrive, whether you allow them to apply for asylum.
It's for citizenship.
For citizenship, yeah. So it's whether they'd ever be granted settled status at all. So the problem with the two is I actually disagree with the government on the first. I think there should be checks on age, and actually I'm partly driven by that. I had a very, very illuminating conversation with a very good friend of mine, best friend, about a year ago, and she works with young asylum seekers in one of our northern cities, and she says that one of the big dangers is that you do get men who are over 18 put in there, and that endangers everybody, actually, not just the women and girls, but also the genuinely child asylum seekers. So I don't quite understand why the government is not pursuing this. It hadn't actually started, interestingly. Nobody's actually been tested yet. So, well, the Tories get themselves exasperated.
Well, they did bring the legislation
They did, but
there will be many people who feel that Labour simply don't have a grip on this and that they aren't actually stopping the boats in any way. I mean, they say they're doing things to smash the gangs and so on, but there don't seem to be many things that they're doing anyway to disincentivise people coming to our shores, Matthew.
Well, I think that the bill that's been proposed, the legislation that's been proposed in the last week, I think does contain actions that will really help with the gangs. It contains the provision that that if you refuse, for example, if you refuse to be rescued when you're in France and insist on coming to Britain, that you can get up to 5 years in prison. But to be honest, Labour has been clearer that you can't just wave a magic wand and stop the gangs, that it takes action across the whole of Europe. On the other half of today's so-called, the sort of revelations, which is the no path to citizenship, no path to settled status. The problem with that is that was the cause of the backlog in hotels, because basically you had people arriving here who were effectively in limbo because they were never actually going to be properly assessed in the system, and they were just going to basically you couldn't send them back to where they came from if it was an unsafe country, and people were stuck in hotels. And I think that the listeners and viewers across the country don't want their local hotels taken up forever with people stuck in the asylum system.
Well, I think
so you have to get people processed.
Well, I think a lot of people will agree with that. Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, what's your take on this?
Well, I mean, that's why we were closing hotels and Labour are reopening hotels. But I was just listening to what you were saying, Matthew. We've got more legislation then, more words, but still no actions, and crossings are up 52%. In the year before the Conservative government was kicked out, which we were kicked out because we lost control, absolutely happy to say that. I've always been happy to say we lost control, we deserved to lose the election. We had boat crossings down 33%. And that was without a single flight going off to Rwanda, without a single policy like that actually taking place, because we had a deterrent. And on day one, the Labour government got rid of the UK's deterrent, which was the Rwanda plan, and saying that you are not coming here. And now we've got hotels being reopened, backlogs growing and growing, and crossings are up 52%. And so, look, we're going to get more words, more legislation, but not action. And look, this is not an easy thing to fix. You saw the number of years that the Conservative government had to try and get something done, the number of bills that we had to go and get passed to repeal loads of historic laws and bring in new legislation and definitions. This is not a quick fix, but Labour said they would smash the gangs, and it's now been nearly 7 months.
Although your Prime Minister promised a quick fix, and all the people currently sitting in the shadow cabinet stood around there while you had the sign saying "Stop the boats." It was a 3-word quick fix, and you didn't deliver it.
Well, boats were down a third, so
it's a very, very complex problem. And I think the issue is that the Rwanda wasn't an incentive that was going to work. 750 million quid.
Crossings were down.
Four people went voluntarily. What we need is a pan-European solution. Labour is not against offshore processing, and so we need to work together with our European allies to actually sort things and get the problem sorted at source before people ever arrive on our shores.
As promised, I want to let Mary in Hemel Hempstead have her say. We had a slight problem with the line a little bit earlier on. Mary, I think we've got you nice and clear now. What point would you like to make?
Well, it's just I can't understand why the unions have been so quiet since Tony Blair, because these people coming over aren't they going to join a union, and it's just got worse and worse. So, but they're absolutely silent.
Yeah, it's interesting that the unions do need to say more on this, don't they? They have been pretty active in regard to some of the deals that have been done with ASLEF train drivers and junior doctors and so on, though, haven't they, Mary? And this week, actually, at Prime Minister's Questions, it was interesting because Kemi Badenoch said the unions will be very happy with what Labour is doing in other areas. Well,
maybe in some areas, but you usually tend to think of them more like people in industry or whatever. No. You know, the poorer sort of section that pay. But it just doesn't make sense to me because this has been like this since Tony Blair opened the gate.
It's a very good point, Mary. Thank you for it. Thank you also to Ian, who says, "Morning, Peter. Labour have invented a group, shall we call Starmer deniers." Barry says, "Morning, Peter. Labour are the enemies of the patriotic citizens of this nation." Mick says, "Matthew Laza is a decent, honest man. Can you ask him if he agrees with Starmer's duplicity and blatant lies?" Do you agree with Starmer's duplicity?
Well, I don't think there has been duplicity and blatant lies, but I will say when I think the government's wrong, and I think the government is wrong, for example, on these tests on young people.